Cliff Banks, founder of the Banks Report and autovate.org. Cliff, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Yossi. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Cliff.
Thanks for coming on. Cliff, we've done a podcast before,
Yes.
and this was a while back. And when I thought about this conversation with you, I want to start with a softball and just say,
Sure.
can you tell? Well, before I even ask you what's in your mind, actually, let me take one step back. Cliff, can you briefly tell, for those that don't know you, who you are, what you do?
I've been in the industry for about 35 years, since 1990. In 2000, I started at Ward's Auto as a journalist, editor, and have worked in media, automotive retail media since then. I started the Banks Report in 2013, which is a newsletter for investors primarily in the automotive retail space. And then I launched Autovate in 2016, which is a conference aimed, focusing on investment in auto retail technology. And we've been doing that conference. We'll be in our 9th year this coming September. So attendees are dealers, execs from the large dealer groups, entrepreneurs, vendors, investors, investment banks, and CEOs from the larger, from the tech firms in the industry.
Yeah, and Cliff, you pulled together a really great crowd. I was texting with one dealer this morning about today's guest, and I said, "Hey, you mentioned Cliff Banks, great insights." I said, "Great." I was like, "What do you think I should ask?" And he specifically pointed out your proximity to lots of industry leaders, and you're very well networked. And I say that in like a positive connotation. You're with the right people. You sort of have a pulse on what's going on. So I want to start very high level. Here's my softball, but like, what's on your mind nowadays when you think about our industry, auto retail? What are you thinking about?
Well, I think there's multiple levels or answers to that question. First, I do spend a lot of time looking at the long-term future of the industry. Probably harder to do than it was 20 years ago in some respect, just because of all of the changes that we're seeing on a technological level, both with AI. I think the Chinese question, the impact that the China automakers may have, and I say may, on our industry here in this country, is unknown yet. Certainly, we have EV question that's been ongoing for a while. There's other things. The maybe a little bit longer out, the whole autonomous driving question, which I was, if you'd asked me 5-8 years ago, I wasn't really optimistic. Well, when I say optimistic, it's probably the wrong word. I was very skeptical as to the viability of that technology. And now, having ridden in a Waymo 90 sometimes in Phoenix, when I go out there, I've changed my perspective somewhat. And I think one of the questions, or one of the dynamics to really look at here, I think even starting today, is what impact Waymo, and I say Waymo because it's different than Tesla, but what impact it's going to have on sales or private ownership in some of these states like Phoenix or Sydney.
What's your estimate,
San Francisco?
Cliff? Do you have
Well,
any
I don't
estimate
know.
on
I
that?
have to start. I got to start looking. I want to start looking at the data, and seeing. And I think we're probably getting to the point now where we may start seeing some of that impact, but it's hard to tell, because we have so many other things going on in terms of tariffs, and the increased costs of vehicles, or the increased purchase price. So there's going to be a lot of noise in that data still, but I would imagine that at some point soon, as Waymo continues to exponentially grow grow the number of rides, that's going to have some impact on
Yeah.
ownership.
I'd be curious to see, after you do your analysis and you look at the data, when
You're right.
we could or might expect it to somehow reflect in sales. And again, it's in a
Well,
way,
that's
it's a
what, yeah.
more modern form of rideshare. So, but again, it comes down to what is the cost, and like you said, will that reflect ultimately into dealership sales?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. Everyone was predicting early on that Uber and Lyft would negatively impact sales, and it actually positively impacted sales. What's different here, obviously, is the autonomous self-driving part with Waymo, and I think Tesla won't impact sales because those are personally owned. Now, depending on whether Elon Musk is able to execute on that robo taxi strategy remains to be seen yet. There's still huge regulatory obstacles there on his end yet. I'm not saying he won't get there. I mean, listen, he's he is there's he's once in a generation
Mhm.
personality and brain. I think so. But still,
I
there's a longer way for him
Yeah.
than what we're seeing with Waymo.
I want to stay on the tangent of innovation, and we did have Alex Vetter here in the
Yes.
comments saying Cliff is the goat, so we agree. Um, all right, so staying on this tangent of innovation, talk to
Yeah.
me, and I have a specific comment. I'll follow up with this after you share yours, but talk to me a little bit about just how you see private equity and VC continuing to impact auto retail. Like you track, you said you specifically write a newsletter for investors. You track this market very closely. How do you? What impacts are you seeing from PE and VC respectively?
Well, it's been uh, I think until really 2013, I would say. I mean, when I started covering it, it was a relatively unknown or misunderstood or underestimated part of the industry. And I started picking up on it when I was at Ward's, maybe the mid 2000s. Just how impactful private equity was, both at the dealership level in terms of buying stores, um, and then in funding or financing technology, or some of these startups that ended up turning into big plays, and really moving, I would say, technology forward in our industry. uh, um, so I think private equity has long played an important role, um, in our space. Now, in the last probably 8 years, maybe a little bit less than that, we're seeing some of these VC firms, FM Capital, um, Autotech Ventures, Auto Ventures, Steve Greenfield's deal, that have targeted dealers as limited partners or LPs. So dealers are getting into the game on the VC side. Dealers have always, I think, funded or backed uh, entrepreneurs, but really not from a VC perspective. Uh, there's quite a few companies over the years that were started within dealerships. Uh, Drive Centric is one, and that's one of the more phenomenal or impressive stories from a startup level in our space, and that's just in recent time, but recent years. Um, and there are others, but so private equity has always played a role, and now we're seeing some of the bigger. When I say now, I mean we have seen bigger players get in. Certainly, when Auto Trader in 2010, 2011, Auto Trader embarked on an aggressive acquisition strategy. We well know, I mean, they bought Kelly Blue Book,
Mhm.
V Auto, and I mean a host of other companies in the space, and that was they were looking to sell. Cox was looking to sell Auto Trader, took it off the market, and then landed Providence Equity Partners as an investor who bought 25% of Auto Trader, and they went on that helped finance their acquisition strategy. So a lot of plays that weren't really covered as much back in the day, I think would generate much more attention today. I think there's a greater sophistication in the market, both on the part of dealers, investors, in their understanding of the role that each of them can play in the space. So
Yeah,
it's a
I
much
will
more
add, Cliff.
intelligent market today.
There's two sides to that coin. I think on one hand, I
True.
think the VC market is very margins are compressing. There's like a record number of VCs in the
Yes.
space. And, I think it's like if you look at the stats, right? Like 90% of VCs don't even get close to outperforming like the S&P or something. And then there's like the
Oh, sure.
10%
Yeah.
power
Sure.
law that do. On the other hand, on the other hand, I think that we live in a world where the value creators or those driving the value are able to participate in the upside of the value they help drive much greater than ever historically. So let me simplify that, right? If I'm a dealer and I am, I'm supporting this platform that's helping me as well, right? But I'm essentially, I'm a large client helping to grow. That's a way, I'm helping drive value. I can participate in that. If I'm a social media influencer that used to be signed by some large network or whatever today, right? I'm helping drive that value. I can participate in my own personal upside doing different things.
Sure.
Just the way the entire all these industries have just completely been disintermediated, and now people want to capture it. And by the way, this goes to like athletes as well, right? You see athletes
Sure.
that are trying to get an ownership and stuff. So you're just seeing this in many different nil in college. So I don't want to go too deep on this tangent because I have plenty of other stuff to ask you. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want to put a pin on that. But so one of the things I wanted to get your take on was you wrote about Hertz and Amazon, which we'll touch on in a second. I haven't heard you talk much about Carvana's entrance into the franchise space. What's your take on that?
It's a work in progress. I think uh, I would venture to say that they they're probably still in the experimental phase, learning phase, and probably weren't even sure themselves what their long term strategy was going to be. But it's absolutely the right move. I was surprised it took them so long to make that play. And I would expect them to make further moves here soon. Um, well, whatever people think of Carvana, I mean, listen, the Garcias are absolute geniuses. Um,
Mhm.
financially, I mean, financial geniuses. What they've been able to pull off um, is is probably one of the most impressive business stories across
Yeah.
any industry uh, in recent memory. And I wouldn't bet against them. I mean, they seem to
L-
have a
Let let me give you a
they
perspective here, Cliff.
yeah.
So you did mention it's still an experimental phase. I agree. So I keep in touch with a couple Carvana investors, and I spoke with one this weekend. And this
Mm,
guy is sizable. I mean, you're talking probably a couple billion at the minimum.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and he shared his own hypothesis. I said, like, talk to me. I'm curious. What are you thinking about nowadays? And he said, look, if I'm them, he's speaking for himself, right? He said, but if I'm
sure,
them, what I'm looking at now is I am looking at scooping up underperforming franchises, right? So we know Stellantis has gone through some issues. Underperforming franchises. Then I'm also looking at scooping up underperforming stores within those underperforming franchises.
sure,
I am then maxing out the allocation I can get from the manufacturer, right? I'm not going to get enough allocation to sell to the entire country every single vehicle and get 100%
right,
market share, sure, but I may get enough allocation to sell 5 times more than my neighboring stores. Then I'm doing this in different pockets of the country, in different geographies. And then you get to a situation where they have these regional hubs that are shipping. They already have the built in distribution. And this, in his perspective, was the way that he said, I don't know how dealers are like sleeping at night. And again, he's talking his own book, sure, but I mean, he has a book for a reason. There's a reason he has, capital
oh,
deployed there
sure,
because he really
sure,
does believe this.
Yeah.
So that was his thesis. And then I instantly, I pinged a couple dealers, say, hey, these people that I think would be interested in this kind of stuff. I said, what do you think about this? Um, just to get some perspective. So I'm curious, have you been looking at it that way? Do you think that this is like and I don't want to pick on Carvana. I think like I agree with you. They're phenomenal at executing, great practitioners, and they've just done a
sure.
very good job. There's other players, large players. There's CarMax one, but I think in a bigger picture, right? They have distribution locked down. Do you think that this is like some form of existential threat? What's your take on this hypothesis that this person with lots of capital tied up in a stock shared with me?
Well, I guess you got to look at. I mean, a threat to who car deal. I mean, other car dealers. Maybe. I mean, I remember having similar conversations in the early 2000s about the public dealer groups and their creation. They were just getting started in the late 90s, early 2000s. CarMax owned several dealerships at one point. Uh, I think that there's some other dynamics at play here also. You mentioned the underperforming brands and underperforming stores, and absolutely, I think that would be probably the smartest play for Carvana at this point. Convincing a Toyota, a Mercedes, some of the higher end franchises too, to sell, to let them own their franchises is going to be a tough stretch right now. I think. Um, I would
Mhm,
imagine just because of their heft and what we know about, you know, uh, some of the other conversations that go on between manufacturers and large dealer groups. Not saying it won't happen. I'm just saying that those
yeah,
conversations be a lot more challenging. Uh, you pick up some Nissan stores or some Chrysler stores or some others. Yeah, I mean, I think the plan that he laid out is certainly viable and makes a lot of
mhm.
sense. Now, whether that's a threat to dealers, I, I, I don't know. I mean,
You
Carvana
you
has
don't
been
seem you don't seem
independent.
convinced. You don't seem convinced.
Well, I don't know if yeah, I don't know that it's a threat. I mean, I will say this: that, Carvana has certainly proven their process works. Certainly on the used car side, which is what they are, but on the customer acquisition side, I think they've got it nailed down. And I
Mhm.
think a customer is crazy or naive if they don't first go to Carvana to get a valuation on their vehicle before going to the store, the dealership.
So
I
then why wouldn't that be the next step in the evolution? I mean, I agree with everything Yossi said and this investor. This is the first thing I thought as soon as Carvana bought that store.
Yeah,
They have the network already. It's already there.
right,
They've nailed, online sales. They're a one price model. They can ship nationwide. So what's to stop
sure,
them from
Well,
shipping a Jeep, like Yossi said,
Yuli,
in a hub? Yeah.
and the biggest gripe I hear from dealers in this, competition is really comes down to their economics versus the average dealers. That's the biggest
sure,
challenge here, right? Because when you
Hmm.
vertically integrate, it's a whole different you have a whole different set of economics to work with, and ultimately you
right.
can deliver the consumer something at a lower cost. And so
Hmm.
that's where the rub typically comes in.
But my question is define threat. I would define. I mean, when we say an accident to car dealers, I mean they then become a car dealer. I mean, they are a new car dealer now.
Not
Um,
to the car dealer model. I think what he's saying is the threat to
right,
current car dealers. I mean, if I can sell into your market at a
right,
lower cost for the
Bingo.
customer and a lower cost for me to acquire the customer and ship using my network that I already have in place, that's a threat to you as a dealer. Well, to me
sure,
as a dealer.
sure,
And by the way, Cliff, and he said one other interesting point in this call. He said, Yossi, as far as I know, franchise laws are not meant to protect one franchise from another, like a franchisee from another. He said,
correct.
he said, as far as I know, franchise laws are meant to protect the franchisor or the franchisee from the franchisor. Again,
Mhm.
I am
Correct.
not. I don't know the legality here. You're saying correct, but that was again another interesting point, which is wow. You're right. In this case, it is franchisee versus franchisee. Should there be more discourse on about this?
Uh, I think people are. I think the discourse will happen once Carvana shows its cards or starts buying up more stores. Then I think the manufacturers themselves will start having questions, start having conversations too. Listen, I mean, we had, like I said, we had similar conversations regarding AutoNation and others when they started, and the manufacturers were adept at limiting the impact overall by you know, um, franchise agreement or not franchise
Mhm.
agreements, but the framework agreements that were in place. So, um, I think um, I think we still have some ways to go before we see whether this really becomes a threat or not.
We'll keep an
But
eye on
I'm
it.
not
We'll have to.
saying I'm not
Yeah.
saying it won't. I'm just saying that I
No,
do
I
think
think your
there's
point's valid. I think your point's valid.
yeah,
I understand. I just think this conversation sparked a bunch of thoughts, and it made me just wonder,
sure,
like,
sure, yeah,
what is the future here? So I want to. Okay, so I want to put a pin on this. Let's go a little
yeah,
higher level. You've spoken a bit about Chinese brands entering the U.S. Where are we at? I mean, of course, we know the tariff situation, and a lot with the administration. Sure, we're not going to bring Chinese vehicles right now, but things change quickly. In the U.S., we have a new president typically every 4 or 8
yeah,
years, and
right.
we don't know exactly, if policy will change. I mean, do you know of any dealers having conversations with any Chinese manufacturers? What's your
Oh,
what's your
sure.
perspective on
Oh,
the
sure,
overall
absolutely.
opportunity
Oh, yeah,
opportunity ahead of
yeah,
us?
yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. That I know for a fact there are numerous dealers that would jump at the chance if a BYD were finally able to bring their vehicles over. I mean, I think for dealers, it's most dealers, and I say most. I mean, the ones that I've talked to, I've had a couple that have told me no, they wouldn't consider on patriotic principles, but others, money's green, and if and if it's a viable vehicle that they can sell and make money, they'll jump at it. So there are Chinese manufacturers that have often, I mean, come over here with plans to sell their vehicles, and none have been successful yet. But at some point that will change. Um, we just don't know the timing there. Um, can we? I guess the question is, do our government policies, the tariffs today, are we able to hold the line for enough time for a GM and Ford, even Stellantis or Chrysler to to be able to, I don't want to say get their act together, but be able to produce or build vehicles that would be competitive to what BYD or some of the others have right now? I think that's the question. Um, and hopefully the answer is yes. But
Mhm.
I would say for now, the Chinese question is more of a national security issue for our government and for the people in charge, and rightfully so. Um, you just cannot have that, Chinese vehicles being sold here at this time.
It's scanning every inch of every
Yeah, I
road
mean,
and every
and,
intersection and every
yeah,
traffic pattern. And yeah,
yeah. I mean, it's just a non-starter, in my opinion. You know, uh, and uh, but again, I
I
think
mean,
our
do we not think that's happening anyways?
oh,
Not th
absolutely is, absolutely.
by way of all the other technology in this country, it's
Yeah,
like a
sure, but do we want to make it even
fair.
easier or open the floodgates?
Mhm.
I don't,
Yeah,
and I think that opinion is held across, both sides of the aisle in DC.
yeah.
It's not just a Republican or Democrat issue there.
From a supply chain perspective, EVs, batteries, do you see any risk posed directly to dealers in the near term?
Uh, you know, say no and then wake up tomorrow morning and it's a different story. Like, you
Then
just don't
then
know.
then it gives us Cliff, then it gives us a reason to bring you back on the show.
Yeah, 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 exactly.
You know?
I think you got to be. I, you got to keep an eye on that stuff,
Yeah.
obviously. Um, but again, it's just maybe it's just because I've been around a long time. You can tell from my hair, I mean, that we've seen and we've gone
I
through
love it.
these threats and these life changing moments, and they keep coming, and the retail industry continues to beat them back or continues to survive, um, and survive well. I mean, look, there are dealers today I talk to that are just knocking the ball out of the park very quietly. I mean, you have those same conversations, so
Mhm.
I mean, it just the way they're able to adapt and change and is is nothing short of phenomenal. and I think there's still several moats involved. There's attempts to erode them, attempts to change them, but um, it's only going to happen, I think, through the courts and maybe legislatively at some level, and we still aren't seeing any massive changes there yet. I could be wrong. I mean, it could happen sooner than later.
Hmm.
And on the supply chain side, like you said, you know, um, it, along with that autonomous vehicle side, certainly the whole connected vehicle play is a conversation. But I think that if it's played right, if automakers play it right, I think that the opportunities to participate with dealers in creating a wow
Yeah.
customer service um, experience. I mean, look, that whole dealer manufacturer relationship's hard. I mean, two different objectives, and they're often at odds.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
speaking of, we did get a comment from a gentleman named Tom Flynn. He wrote, "What about state franchise laws and manufacturer dealer agreements? I believe dealer agreements do not allow for out of market area online sales." So, it would be interesting to bring so like a franchise dealer agreement expert on the show to talk about that because I think we could
Yeah.
dive into the details there. Um,
Well, it would be certainly one of the state franchise guys, and
mhm.
certainly state franchise laws. Some are stronger than others. Um, you just go down the line. I mean, Don Hill or Don Hall in Virginia.
Yeah,
Ted Smith in Florida. Um, but these still, the and Brian Miles in California. Yeah, the challenges are that they win a lot, but they also lose some in the courts. I
mhm.
think New Jersey just lost too. Um, so yeah, but certainly having one of the state franchise law guys on, or not state, but the state association directors would be
Cliff,
very
final question before we wrap up.
yeah.
Usually at this pace, we're going to launch a new segment called the Risk Assessment with Cliff Banks. We're
My
going risk by
wheels are
risk.
turning. Oh my God. Just like
Um,
threat,
the
threat,
risk
threat.
assessment with Cliff Banks on the car dealership guy. All right, Cliff. So final thought here. You posted about Amazon and Hertz, the partnership. I loved your take. It was just so sober. It was like, guys, why is this news? Hertz has literally
Yeah,
been selling cars on cars.com, on car gurus.
right.
So I thought it was funny the way you praise that because I think anytime there's Amazon anything, it
Oh
just
yeah,
gets eaten
yeah,
up by the entire internet and the media. Because of the possibilities. And I do think that was maybe the bigger angle here. It's
Sure.
like Amazon leaning into used as opposed to Hertz leaning into Amazon. Uh, give us the breakdown here. What are you seeing? What does this entail? What's next?
We'll just continue to see announcements from Amazon regarding dealers, maybe some manufacturers. Listen, the Amazon Autos play, and I wrote this in 2018. Well, I actually wrote
Mhm.
about it in 2016 when Hyundai and Amazon started getting closer. But wrote much more comprehensive report in 2018, and nothing that I wrote then. I've seen nothing that changes my opinion or perspective. I think from what I wrote then. It
Okay.
is
And
a
what was it?
digital advertising play. It's a digital advertising play for Amazon, part of a bigger strategy, overall company strategy. And in 2018, I forget what the actual numbers were, but uh, Amazon was generating 4 to 6 billion in digital advertising revenue, and that was up from like 1.8 in 2017. Today, well, last year it was 56 billion, I believe, that they generated, and it will be in the 60s this year, and probably in the 70s in 2026. Uh, Listen, they have no Amazon. First of all, has no interest in selling cars, no interest in paying a floor plan, no interest in owning vehicles and selling. They are collecting data, and the auto industry is rich in data, and this is going to
Mm.
help them with their digital advertising efforts. Um, so I don't. I think it's another site for dealers to list their inventory, and maybe Amazon comes with some extra bells and whistles, maybe, but they still have a huge learning curve ahead of them. We've seen Google and Microsoft over the years come in with similar plays and out, um, just because it is tough. Um, So uh, I like Fan Jin. I mean, who's leading the efforts? Uh, I've been super impressed with her. Um, but again, I think the Hertz play. I mean, listen, it's for Hertz. It's smart. I mean, they want to put their inventory everywhere possible because when they sell retail, I mean, they'll get $1,000 to $1,500 more per vehicle than what they sent to the auction. No surprise there. So
It
uh,
does make me wonder though why Amazon is going this build versus buy route where they could, in theory, make an offer for an existing network in the industry, a listing site,
oh
even if for the last decade, Carvana, not, now is a different story. Not that they couldn't, but it's a whole different ballgame. I
yeah,
mean,
well,
you're talking like,
I've said that to them. That to me, just write the check for cars.com or I mean,
yeah,
auto are not for sale, but cars.com or car. You just write the check. I mean, so it's built. They have
yeah,
everything you want and what you're trying to do, and you just layer
hmm
that Amazon name and some of the other technology on top of it, and boom, you're there. You are. Um,
yeah.
so I don't know. I mean, who knows? Yeah, probably it's pretty far down the road. They're probably pretty far down the road to make that move now. I mean,
hmm
but uh,
Well, Cliff, it's
so
always great to have you on. Cliff Banks, founder of the
great.
Banks Report and Autovate. Thanks for making it happen for us, giving us the risk assessment with Cliff Banks.
Thanks, Cliff.
Love it. Great conversation,
Thank-
guys. Thanks.